All right, so it is 6:30 p.m. on the dot, 6:31 actually, and we are live. Um, and as usual, waiting on folks to arrive. So if you're out there, give us a couple of minutes and we should be back soon. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, how are you all today?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. Ready to
Good.
discuss this interesting book.
Yeah.
Hi, Leonie.
Hello, Nicole. Happy
Good to
New
see
Year.
you. Happy New Year to you. And I saw a picture of you on the I'm a Happy Black Woman.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. I said, look at Leonie. Cute. Very cute.
Oh,
Hang on, you all. Let me get I'm going to grab my notes. Hang on.
Okay. I missed that. What was the occasion, Leonie?
I went to Fort Lauderdale. They had a Manifest Your visioning event over 3 days in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh.
I went with my sister.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah.
Uh-huh. Did you learn anything?
You know, it wasn't so much about having new information, but I think it was just more about having the time, like to have dedicated, to know that I was there and that's what I was there for.
Mm-hmm.
So just do the work. And it helped me to like refocus, to remember that I want to focus on building my business. So, and I've been so distracted with client work, which is great. I mean, it pays my bills. I mean, I make, okay money and everything, but it's not the thing that I was excited about when I left my job in the spring. So I kind of rededicated myself to that and made another investment with a thing that she's having. And I think I'm gonna go to Atlanta in the spring.
Oh.
For another event. Never been to Atlanta before, so.
Oh, very cool. Nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what's going on, Nicole?
Nothing much. The usual school, work, life, just the usual. Hoping we will have I'm hoping this will be a wonderful semester. I'm teaching online this semester, so I'm not having to, kind of see students face to face, which is, let's just say, a happy break from my norm. So, but yeah, beyond that, nothing much really.
And what are you teaching?
This semester I'm teaching business and technical writing, still in the English department. So yeah.
Oh, very nice. All right.
Yes. And yourself, how things been going?
Nothing really going on, just taking it easy.
I do understand that.
There's someone screaming in my hallway. Can you hear it?
No, I don't hear it.
Good. So I don't know. I did see a message from Kim that she is planning to join us tonight. But it's getting late. So I don't.
Oh, there she is.
Okay. And I think this is probably it. Vanita had I think she wants to join us. She had a meeting she needed to go to tonight. So.
Okay.
Hi, but I do hope she joins us.
Kim.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. Happy New Year, Kim.
Oh, Happy New Year. Hi, Leonie.
Hello.
Hi. Good to see you, Kim.
Hi, Nicole. Hey, Michelle.
Hey. So, okay. So, I think we're all here, of course. So why don't we get started? And This is the start of session 10.
Wow.
Woohoo! Yay!
10 books. 10 books that
Wow.
we have read collectively. So, welcome everyone to session 10 of the Global Black Feminist Reading Circle. Tonight is the start of our reading of Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis-Benn. And I have the paperback version. The cover is just so pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the colors. And so I use the colors as a theme to create the artwork stuff around this book. And it just kind of gives me a cheery feeling being around these colors. And
Right.
I think it's a great thing that we are reading this book coming into the spring season. So Here Comes the Sun, a novel by Nicole Dennis-Benn. That is, of course, set in Jamaica. Beautifully written. Of course, I have read the whole book. Beautifully written. Spiced with lots of patois. So, a little challenging if you don't quite get the dialect. And the beautiful island setting. So, and chapter 1, of course, is packed with all kinds of things going on and people being introduced and ideas coming up. So lots to chew on. So anyway, again, we are in session 10 of the Global Black Feminist Reading Circle. You can learn more about our group on Google+, Facebook, or YouTube, where all of our video archives are held. Odom. I'm in Brooklyn, New York, and I am joined tonight by in the order that you came in, Leonie.
Hello, everybody. My name's Leonie, and I'm joining you from Toronto, Canada.
Canada, all right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Wilson, and I'm joining from College Station, Texas tonight.
Texas.
And I'm Kim Brandon, and I am joining you from New York.
New York. All right. So do you want to work on choosing the future facilitators now, or you want to put that off till the end?
Yeah, that's fine. Would y'all like to do so now?
I guess I'd like to put it off to the end.
Me too.
Especially if you're
Okay.
recording, then we can do that when we stop recording.
I like that too.
Okay. All right. So I guess I'll go ahead and read in chapter 1, we meet Margot, the main character, and learn she works at a hotel in Jamaica, both on and off the books. Margot is a prostitute who has sex with foreign men to supplement the income she uses to support herself and her family, especially the education of her younger sister, Thandi. Margot is also a lesbian. We meet Dolores, mother of Margot and Thandi, who sells crafts to foreign customers, and Thandi, who is having her skin bleached. Other characters introduced in this chapter include Maxie, the taxi driver, a Rastafarian who smokes ganja all day and foolishly entertains revolutionary thoughts. Alfonso, Margot's white Jamaican boss, whom she screwed to keep her job. Verdine Moore, Margot's lesbian lover, hated by the people. Miss Ruby, the woman who treats Thandi with bleaching cream. And Charles, a common boy who shares an attraction with Thandi. Some of the themes introduced in Chapter 1 include the poor serving the rich, prostitution, foreign white men using the island as their playground, gentrification, mother-child relationships, pressure to succeed, and the effects of colorism. Chapter 2 consists mainly of scenes with Margot braiding her younger sister's hair as Dolores cooks dinner, and Thandi going to school in an oversized sweatshirt as part of her skin bleaching process. Margot and Dolores argue, and we glimpse the financial strain it's under. All right. Who wants to read question 1? Everybody's on mute.
I'll read.
Okay.
Okay. Question 1 begins with a quote. She undresses for the client whose main goal is usually to satisfy a deep curiosity that he never had the balls to satiate with the women in his own country. Like a Black woman's breasts, for instance. Many of these men want to know the shape of them, the nipples, whether or not they are the same color as tar pressed on the heels of their leather shoes from the paved roads in Europe or America, or if Black nipples have in them the richness of topsoil after a thorough rain shower. They want to touch and she lets them. She doesn't see it as demeaning. She sees it as merely satisfying the curiosity of foreigners who pay her good money to be their personal tour guide on the island of her body. So A asks, what are your initial thoughts about Margot, the main character? Are you sympathetic toward a woman who's using her body sexually to supplement her income, or disgusted by it? Do you believe you understand why she might not find this demeaning, or imagine this character is suppressing her true feelings? And B, the idea of foreigners, i.e., white men, who are curious about a Black woman's body leads me to consider what white women are feeling when they ask to touch a Black woman's hair. Do we think it's normal and natural to be curious about people who look different from ourselves, or and unnatural? Why are Black women typically offended when a white person asks to touch our hair?
Thank you.
Well, let me go for looking at A. So my thoughts on Margot. I am glad that the author creates a complex character for us. One in which we can naturally understand her flaws, misgivings, but also more so the kind of the interiority, to understand all of that, the other side of this, of the ways in which she has decided to money and in some ways make the most of a horrible situation. The author uses Margot to force us all to understand our role in underdevelopment and ways in which exploitation occurs. So, you know, the tourists she wonders, do they even, you know, there's a way that Margot understands that the tourist, she is not looking to really make eye contact with the tourist, and on the opposite hand, her mother sees this in reverse. You know, so her mom is wondering, do they even see her? Margot, I guess, as a result of her side hustle, she doesn't care to really see the tourists. But I was thinking of Bradbury's short story, All Summer in a Day. I don't know if you all have read that, and I was wondering if there's a connection here, because the main character in that text, her name is also Margot, and she is the only person who remembers how the sun looks. She's waiting to see the sun, and the cruelty of her classmates when the sun comes out, they lock her in the closet. And so she never gets an opportunity to see the sun. So I'm thinking there may be like a literary allusion there.
Wow.
But but yeah, I like her. So I mean, I'm liking getting to know this character so far.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I had a couple of thoughts.
Okay.
One is kind of like, well, especially in terms of like judging somebody for it. Like, I don't really tend to judge people for whatever they do. I'm like, as long as it doesn't involve animals or children, I really don't care. But I also kept thinking, like, if you come from like a history where your body is a commodity, then maybe you start to see yourself as a commodity, you know? So that was kind of one thought that I had. And the other thing too is that, like, it's interesting that she doesn't judge these men. I don't know, for some reason it made me think about like how women are told to understand their bodies and to judge their bodies, especially around this question of it being like a commodity or something that you can sell, or something that people can take, people with more power can take. And it's kind of like there's this understanding that like your value, that you devalue yourself by selling yourself, and that the only other option is to be like pure. It's kind of like there's two ends, and there's like nothing in the middle, right? It's like women are either completely debased or they're precious. It's like, so it's interesting that to have that dichotomy presented in this question and as a discussion point, because it's a dichotomy that very much exists, and it's something that exists across cultures, right? Like women are that prostitute or precious one is very much an international trope around womanhood, especially with bodies. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think for me, I think she would have to, on some level, suppress her feelings. So I think that something about the way she dotes on the sister, as if the sister is a part of her, the clean part of her, the part that will not be touched by all of these different hands. Like she takes her salvation from hoping that Thandi, thank you, gets free. And the way she combs her sister's hair, it just seems like chick ain't all there. She just seems like she doesn't see a way out for herself. So she's hitching her wagon to her sister. And I personally find it difficult to read about her and the white men when you consider, Jamaica as a slave post, that this is something that is a part of our history. And we were so forced to do whatever captives wanted us to do with our bodies with no say. So I personally find it hard to read about black women with white men because there's no other way out. There's just no other way out for Margot. So I feel for her, but personally I find it depressing to read.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, as Nicole said, she is a very complex, and to me, one of the complexities is she doesn't exactly have to do this work of prostitution. And like Leonie, I don't like to judge, you know, people do what they have to do, and prostitution, perhaps the oldest profession known to humanity. So women and people have been doing it for years. Um, but a lot of times when we hear those stories, it sounds like there really was no other way for this person. They really were pushed to the very bottom of existence, and as a means of survival, they did what they had to do or felt they had to do. In Margot's case, she has a job. She has a day job. And it's not necessarily it's not a high paying job. And, you know, obviously it's expensive to live in Jamaica, and you have to pay for education. And so she is paying for the education of her little sister. But it's not quite the same, to me, not quite the same pressing issue of survival that is pushing her toward this work. And so, you know, and so to me, that's a twist on it. You know, how do we feel about somebody that does this work when they don't necessarily have to? Necessarily being forced by white men or the vagaries of poverty and underdevelopment into doing this. And she has some light skin privilege, which could lend itself to other types of work. And so, you know, and so I think that also leads me to want to question, you know, I mean, I think we're all selling something. And so you do have to take a rather judgmental point of view in order to say, well, it's okay for me to sell what I'm selling, but the other person to sell what they're selling, you know, and where is their freedom of choice in choosing to sell what they sell. So I think she's a complex character, and we will see that more and more through the book. The hair thing, or, you know, the idea of being curious about a Black woman's body. And, so really what Margot is selling is satisfaction of that curiosity. Of course, also made me think about, the frequent experience that we have as Black women when we're around a lot of white people, where almost inevitably somebody's going to I just want to touch your hair. And we hate that. And so why do we hate it? I mean, I think it goes back. I think it's natural to be curious about people who look different from you, but because we have had our power stripped from us, where we have not had the power to say yes or no, you can touch, then very protective of the power that we've gained to be able to say yes or no. And so when somebody just kind of touches your hair, getting your permission, or just even asking the question, it really, I think, sets off some deep feelings for us. What do you all think about that?
I guess for me, I look at it as almost spiritual, that if somebody has on a hijab or whatever their faith, their religion is, and that's their culture, I'm not curious. If you want to share with me what goes on underneath, what your hair looks like in private, that's up to you. I don't feel like I have to walk over to somebody and say, "What's your hair doing under there? How often do you wash it? What's going on?" I need to know everything about you at all times. Right. Everything about you, I need to know all of the time. Right. And I find it to be more privileged than I'm comfortable with, as opposed to just accepting what somebody offers you about them. And that if I'm not offering you those pieces of myself, then you don't get to ask for those. Mm-hmm. You just don't. And I had someone touch my hair a couple of years ago, and we're both activists. And I had those twists in my hair, and he came over and he just kind of touched them. He says, "I just got to see what's going on here." And I just said, "Don't you ever touch me again. My hair is a part of my body. You do not have the right to touch me." And he was so hurt that I had put him in place. But at what point do you decide what parts of me are private and what parts are public? Mm-hmm. Who are you to say you can touch my shoulder, you can touch my ear, you can touch my leg, you can touch my breast? It's up to me to decide what you can and cannot touch. And if we're not intimate, then you don't touch nothing. Please.
I agree here in that regard. I think that is a good parallel, Michelle, to touching a Black woman's hair. We could cue Solange's song, "Don't Touch My Hair." But I also think it's what Kim has kind of stated. I like how you put that in that dichotomy of being a privileging, an insider, kind of the insider-outsider conundrum there. Because for me, what it reinforces, and it really what this is already kind of reinforced for us through Margot's character, is what Jamaica Kincaid describes as the difference between the native and the tourist. It's about who gets to be curious, who gets the reprieve from boredom, who gets the opportunity to travel, to journey to a different place, and to, at that moment in time, you know, be somebody else in broad daylight or in their native countries. You know, it's not just that they want to know about a Black woman's body, it's a foreign Black woman's body. So she's kind of reduced to this exotic kind of, you know, she talks about kind of like her body is this island. She's the tour guide. I love that. The way she says that, the author describes that, but this exotic tour guide. And so it's so yeah, it brings to light some of the complexities of, you know, just who has an opportunity to be curious, even in, you know, our so-called postmodern world in the 21st century. Typically white people and white men and straight white men in particular, they have the opportunity to act upon their curiosity. And that's where I think that tension lies for me.
Absolutely.
I have this,
Go ahead, Leonie. Go ahead.
yeah, I want to go back to one of the earlier points that I said where I don't really judge people. I want to be clear. I don't judge people, but I don't think that being a prostitute comes without consequences. Because of how I grew up, I know quite a few people who do that for work. And there is not choice in it. Even to be able to call yourself a sex worker is such like a thing steeped in privilege that like it drives me crazy. It isn't so much. I don't know anybody who is doing sex work that's not a white woman that is like happy about it or doesn't come from a past in which they did not have choice around who touched their body. I literally don't. It's not like I know 500 of them, and so I'm speaking from some kind of like, you know, scientific whatever. But I just don't know any. And I find the conversation that's happening around sex work very problematic for that reason, because it does seem to come from people who have extraordinary privilege and are doing sex work. So I want to say that. And the other thing too is that I also find it a little odd that the conversation around the touching of the hair is often couched in this concept of privilege. And I wonder if it is where the space of where to place the experience of so many Black women and girls who have experienced some kind of physical or sexual violence, and so therefore have a load of touch, cannot stand touch. And I'm just wondering how much of this is so I just want to put that in there because I think trauma can be part of the story and not just a rejection of privilege. So I just wanted to speak to
that. And I also have to kind of consider like the ways in which Black bodies have been put on display in these oppressive colonial structures under the guise of colonization, as well as American oppressive structures, oppressive racist classist structures, global white supremacy, always being surveilled, looked at. Other individuals looking at and surveilling the Black body and being able to be the spectators. Even when we look at viral video today, I mean, that is but another symptom of that, the othering that occurs, because it's not like individuals, when a lot of times when Black women's hair is touched, it's, you know, sometimes you want to, you know, I'm not a petting zoo, right? Like, you know, I'm human like you are. And that just, I'll close out with this quickly. And I think that's why I'm drawn to this character, Margot, even I shouldn't say even as, she is a sex worker. She also has this job at the hotel, and she's fully in control of these choices that she makes. But I like the way the author humanizes her. There's something about just being humanized that oftentimes when we're talking about Black people in real life or in fiction, sometimes we miss kind of like that humanization process.
Mm-hmm.
I just
Right.
want to add, I agree with Leonie in terms of the abuse, but I also think that it is a part of the American culture where our bodies are a product, a commodity. And so there is this whole thing of, let me look in your mouth, let me see, if you something that I can use. Is there any part of you that I can use? And what I do find at times is that not only the touching of my hair, I think that it is because nobody touches my hair. People kind of know I have this persona that don't go there. You really don't want to do that. And so, but I do find it intrusive when certain people ask me such personal questions. Just extremely personal questions. Well, how much did you pay for that? And what did you do about this? And what did you? And I'm just like, whoa, 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 hold up. And it was one person that I asked this white gentleman. He was asking me these very personal financial questions because I think he felt that he had the right. And I flipped it and I just asked him about his sex life. And I just said, well, I thought we were on this term. I thought we were getting personal. So I just find it so hard that for somebody to say, oh, so you were here before gentrification. So what does that mean? And how does this work? And how do you get out of here? That's not for you to ask. Anyway, so and the last thing is in terms of our character, I'm wondering, and I haven't finished the book like Michelle. I'm wondering what that relationship is between the mother and the sister, that she would do this to pay for somebody else's education. Emotionally, she may not have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's why, like Nicole was saying, how complex this character is. And I know family dynamics. There's certain things that I do in my family that I would never do for other people. There's never. I mean, I don't go as far as this character, but we do what we do for our families and our role in that family.
Right. Kim, I'll be right back. Can you go ahead and read question 2, please?
I sure can. All right, let's go here. Maxie smokes ganja all day, and by night he's a taxi driver and a dealer to the tourists who are adventurous enough to go looking for ganja in the town. He has children by 2 different women she no longer associates with because of their small minds and quickness to judge. Excuse me. So she thinks she's the big shot now, working in the hotel. Look upon her, huh? 30 years old and no man, no children. Her her pum musty dry up. Can't even come down from her throne. She fuck right. Oh God, I was the wrong person. She thinks she's too nice. Are there people from your childhood you've had to leave behind? And if so, what led you to your decision to do so? And B, why would women look down on a woman who doesn't have a man or children? What do you think about this? What leads us to judge one another? What impact do our judgments have on people? Anybody want to start on any of those? Michelle, do you think you could reread that sentence I read better? Because I don't have the right, the dialogue was real hard for me.
Who?
There was one sentence that you put there. I was just wondering what that sounds like. The last two sentences.
I don't know patois, but I would say the way I hear it in my head. So she thinks she's a big shot now, eh? Working in the hotel. Look upon her now. 30 years old and no man, no children. Her pum pum must dry up. Can't even come down from her tongue for fuck right. She thinks she too nice.
You go ahead. Nice. Thank you.
I can tell you it was too fast.
Was it? Okay. Let's hear you say it, Leonie.
I never, you know what? I never put on a patois accent ever.
What?
In my life. No.
How did that happen?
It's my job to understand it. I don't have to speak like that. It's no judgment there. It's just that, like, I don't talk like that. I never have. Trust me, I grew up with plenty of white friends who can do really great Jamaican accents. And
does your mother talk? Does your mother talk?
Well, my mom, when it's how my mom talked. My mom since passed, but when I spent the first few days in Fort Lauderdale with my uncle, her baby brother, who's 73, and that's how he talks.
Okay. Okay, and you understand it?
Oh, I have to, because I grew up in a house full of Jamaicans. They were all born and raised in Jamaica. I was the only one not born and raised there.
Well, Benita's husband is Jamaican, and she says that she speaks and understands patois better than he does. Yeah, so it's a bit of a challenge. Reminds me though of the old Southern dialect. So
I need to
on
find
the question.
I'm gonna find you some poetry from Miss Lou. I'm gonna share it during the week there. For you, Kim.
Oh, thank you.
Some poetry in patois.
Funny, I went out with a Jamaican guy for a while, and he spoke the King's English, and then we went to Carnival on Eastern Parkway, and we were around his people. I didn't know what he was talking about. I didn't know who he was. I needed a translator. It was just the funniest thing. All I know is I remember them saying, "Why you bring that Yankee girl to our yard?" That's all I remember.
Wow. All right. Questions?
Well, I can think of people I had to leave behind, and I just think that it's constant. Where as you grow and change, people are going to leave you, and you're going to leave people that you may not be going as far as somebody else is on any given road. It doesn't always have to be negative, but a lot of people get sick of me because I just don't like, what do you call it? Just talking about stupidness. See how you hear the judgment, right? Like you can't talk to me about these what do you call it? Current events and what the Kardashians are doing or all of that. And so if that's your lane, then a lot of people drop me like a hot rock because I must be making faces when they're talking. And so I lose friends because I can be very intense. So not only have I left people have left me.
Yeah.
You have that issue, right, Michelle?
Actually, I do, yeah.
I just can't see you
It's a
talking
problem.
about silliness.
Or just small talk, the weather really makes me kind of crazy. But since I've become an old woman, I have figured out that keep looking for my tribe, putting my tribe together. Because it's not all in the same place and never be. So whatever years I have left on the planet, I want to mostly be around my tribe. That's but the looking down on this 30-year-old woman who has no man and no children, I do think is a problem in the Black community. And I think it has something to do with wanting to feel like whatever choices we've made in our own life were the right choices. And so anybody that's doing something different must be wrong. But I think it's a very hurtful practice that we have. And I wish we could outgrow it. So yeah. So if you've got a slew of children and the sun rises and falls around your man, then you may think that is the only way to live, and anybody not into that, is worthy of your disdain. Of course, I disagree.
Yeah, there has recently been controversy over that. The singer Sierra, who's married to the football player Russell Wilson, posted something on Twitter about, women needing to level up. I think it's really rooted in patriarchy, that, and this notion that, in an attempt to kind of normalize this or to suggest that this is every woman's desire. And that's the beauty of this thing called life and our individuality, is that we all have different desires. Some women just simply don't want that. They're building empires. They don't have time, or it's just not a desire. And I really think, I see Leonie, and I really think that when we start talking about sisterhood, whether it's in the context of Black feminism, womanism, the movement, I do think it serves us to let go of that kind of destructive language, but to understand that we're going to have to, if we care, we're invested in this, continue laboring to call that out, to disrupt that. Because it really is self-defeating. Not everybody just wants that.
Right. I mean, we talk so much about the need for unity, Black community, but these are the kinds of behaviors that destroy unity.
so annoying.
Huh?
It's so annoying. This way of thinking. It's like,
Yeah.
it came up a lot. It came up too much at the 3-day manifest your vision thing. And and I also put a note down here about the singer too. I'm like, honestly, I don't this whole idea that like the whole point of life is to like get a man, and then once you get him you have to keep him happy by subjugating yourself. I'd rather slit my wrist.
Me too, Leonie.
I'm like, for real? And it's not like people aren't out there that like, I've dated men. They're grown-ups. They can handle it. But I mean, there was just a lot. Like, I had to actually leave a session because I was just like, it's just team too much right now. Right? But it's like, I guess it's
So
the thing
there
that
was what, women at the visioning session?
it was an all-female event, except for there were 3 men there, all of whom were getting paid to be there to do jobs. And they got so much attention. It was ridiculous. And then there was one of the presenters there where her whole thing was about like basically like how to find a man, keep a man or whatever. And I had to leave. Because I'm like, I did not want to give up 55 minutes of my life to listen to this bullshit.
Wow.
But yet people ate it up. They ate it up, right? I mean, you even look at like I don't know now, but like when you read like black magazines like Ebony and Essence, and there's too many articles around. There's a whole industry around black women trying to find a man. I mean, it must be responsible for a good 10, 20, 30% of black business, black money earned, how to find a man business. And it's so ridiculous. The thing is that it's really harmful. That patriarchy piece is not just harmful for women, it's also harmful to males and to men, right? Because it keeps them in a state of permanent childhood because you have to be the king. Well, who got time for that? So yeah, and you're weird if you don't do it. You're weird if you're like, if you don't want to get married and have kids or whatever. So anyway, it's obviously it's not even a sore subject. I just find the whole thing ridiculous. So
yeah. Me too. Leon, why don't you go ahead and read question 3?
I hope that at some point we can come back and explore this more.
Okay. Did you want to say something?
It seems like if I have a little piece of man and you running around here happy without one, why would I put you down? What do I get out of putting you down? I think that's the question that I would ask. Who am I? And what's my situation that I would add to that voice? Who is contributing to that and who's not contributing to it? Because I always remember a friend of mine, she said she would prefer to be single, wishing she was married, than married and she's single. And so I have never wanted to be in the marriage just to be in a marriage. So I just wonder if we don't have to do it today, but I'm just saying at some point I'd love to come back to this.
All right, question 3. Maxie was always book smart, using words no one had ever heard used in everyday conversations. Indigenous, inequality, uprising, revolution, mental slavery. Had he not filled his head with rubbish about freedom and Africa, he would have been a doctor, a lawyer, a politician, or some other big shot by now, since he had certainly been the smartest boy in school. Margot doesn't want the same thing to happen to her sister. Like Maxie, Thandi is book smart. She has the potential to be somebody. Margot has to make sure that Thandi doesn't ruin it. for herself. A. Are dreams of freedom and equality foolish, in your opinion, destined to ruin an otherwise promising life? B. Are Black people conflicted about formal education, and if so, what might account for such a conflict? C. We are beginning to see the pressure Margot puts on herself for her little sister to succeed, and what it must be like for Thandi to bear the weight of familial expectations of success. Where do you imagine at this point in the story this theme will lead?
Thank you. On the
I think
name Tom, the whole time that I was reading the book, I was pronouncing it Thandi. But I watched that video that I posted of Nicole Dennis-Benn speaking at the bookstore, Revolution Books, and she pronounces it Thandi. So that's why I now say Thandi with confidence. Anybody on any of those questions?
I think Maxie's probably the only one that has it right.
Ganja.
It's the idea of being somebody by following the norm and knowing that the norm is soul sucking. Like, you know, yeah, so.
Right, he talks about the schools turning our children into robots.
Yep.
You know. Mm-hmm.
I think there's a level of
Education, I would have said that
safety
sentence right.
I'm sorry, Leonie?
No, go ahead, Kim.
Oh, okay, I just missed what Leonie was saying. I apologize. I think there is a safety in assimilation. I think that if you assimilate the dominant culture, there's a safety. So if you look at all our Black leaders, most of them were murdered. So I think that to take that brilliant mind of yours and to become a doctor and a lawyer and get the big house and the medical plan and the car and the maid and all of that stuff, you're gonna have a longer life, and you might be able to get your sister off the street, you know, out the hotel rooms. So, you know, maybe that she's looking at her little sister as her life insurance, her parachute for the future. So I'm just amazed at where this story is going. But at the same time, I'm hoping that it gets there soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it does. I think it readily reflects kind of the immigrant narrative, whereby it is not uncommon for family members to put this person through to support this individual who, after the fact, is going to give back, sponsor immigration, and so on, or just, you know, steady income that person would be able to, you know, send to family members. But I do think many Blacks, I think we are extremely conflicted about formal education, hence our very animated debates regarding, and spirited, shall I say, debates regarding charter schools versus public schools versus private schools. And we have been trying for years, Brown v. Board and W.B. Du Bois' 10th notions, we've been trying for years to figure out how to get beyond the project of enslavement, and which is you know, but a part of the colonial project. And we do know we are onto something. We know that education plays a role in our continued enslavement. I think we are keenly aware of that. The complexity and complicity lies in how do we move beyond that, because, you know, we have, that's where, you know, we get these sects, You know, this individual thinks this is the way. These persons feel that that's the way, you know, to work within the system, to attempt to, you know, to be separated from the system, to, there's so much we think about in the 70s and the Muslims, American Muslims, Nation of Islam, the schools and the ways in which kids were performing at high levels, those particular schools. And then our public schools are largely, you know, increasingly of concern. So what do we do but reify a splintering, right? Because we cannot, and I don't even know if it's possible or feasible or logical to think that we'll be united on an issue that's so personal, that is mainly left up to parents as to how you want your child educated. And I will say, I am beginning to see more Black parents forego the school system altogether, and either they're homeschooling or some kind of co-ops. Let's face it, curriculums are racist. You know, they're not, there's a critical issue here. We understand it, but how do we overcome it? It's a tough one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting how this kind of dropped that idea in there. That Maxie's head is filled with about freedom and Africa. And he would have been a doctor or a lawyer or a politician or some other big shot now. You know, and then she kind of goes on. There's so much that's packed into this chapter 1. That is really overwhelming. But you know, in terms of your point, Nicole, about moving beyond, I think for me this is one key to it. This figuring out how you really feel about the ideas of freedom and equality. And you know, I'm going to jump down to the very last, where I'm talking about how do you feel about school uniforms and what function do they serve? Because I think it's normal and natural and healthy as adults, as parents, to want to push our children in a particular direction, to give them a certain structure, to train up a child as they shall go. And, you know, I think it's just what humans do. But we are enmeshed in a very toxic society. And so if we just keep looking for ways to fit in to the toxicity and don't allow ourselves to think about fixing problems, fumigating the place, real change, then we're just going to keep doing the same things over and over again. And things that are clearly not working, things that are clearly for the masses of us. And the thing is, you can pursue a course. You could be a lawyer or a politician or a doctor, or a teacher or whatever, and have a measure of success current. What's that noise?
That was me, sorry.
Okay. As an individual. But I think that the masses of us are losing this race, are really not doing well. And so I think we have to figure out what we really mean, how we really feel about freedom and equality. Is it reasonable to expect that people who have hated us and done everything possible to oppress and abuse us are going to provide the tools of our liberation? And so do we really want to be free of the society as it is? Or do we just want to find our own slice of the pie?
Mm.
And I know it's an uncomfortable question, and all we really can do is what we can do as an individual. But I'm more and more convinced that we don't really want freedom. We really want to be in a superior position to somebody else. And if that's what we really want, then we have what it takes to pursue freedom.
Yep, I think profound, Michelle, and that's a tough one, and one we continue to struggle and grapple with. How do we, class comfort? Remember when we were reading Giddings, When and Where I Enter? And so even in the midst of Black women being in community, doing the activist work, laboring together, social class still reared, and class differences still reared its ugly head. And how do we engage that? How do we escape it? So you're right. It's one that that's a heavy one. It's a heavy one.
It's a real quandary. It's like getting out of slavery. I mean, it's not an easy question. Escape physical bondage. But it's like we've just exchanged it for other forms of bondage that we've yet to figure out how to escape. And, you know, I guess like Harriet Tubman was dealing with, not all of us even think we're enslaved. So there's that. So, okay, anything else on question 3?
I guess the thing that gives me hope is something that Nicole was saying, that because there's so much information out there, we now have the opportunity to educate ourselves, like this group, and that we can start to take the blinders off and start to connect the dots of the real American history, and not just rely on what the Constitution says, but what was happening with those folks who wrote it, and what that then means to my body, the hypocrisy of the American dream. So I feel optimistic that all the others are coming together and starting to say, what are we doing? What marching orders do we have? And I think that we will see that some of us will start to march to the beat of our own drums. And that's a dangerous place to be, because assimilation provides a level of safety sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. It is getting late. I want to jump down to, I think it's the last question. Oh, well, yeah, I kind of wanted to look at 9A. Why would Margot be burning hair? Dennis-Benn just kind of drops that in there and keeps on moving. But let's look at question 8. Luckily, you have, all right, I got to slow down, right, Leonie? Luckily, you have good hair already. Miss Ruby says, good coolie hair. Your daddy is an Indian? I don't know, Thandi says, still staring up at the planks in the ceiling. Never met him. Tisk tish, well, God played a cruel joke on you. Because, child, if your skin was as pretty as your hair, you'd be one gorgeous woman. Remember to stay out of the sun. Like I tell you, Miss Ruby says. Because you and I both know, God no look ugly. What is the ugly God no like? How does Miss Ruby know what God likes? What do you imagine is the impact on a child of hearing Miss Ruby's opinions about what God does and does not like? Anybody?
Well, in terms of burning the hair, my mother was extremely superstitious, and I have all of her superstitions. And I had combed my hair out, and just this weekend, my daughter was burning my hair, and I said to her, "What's burning?" And she says, "Oh, you left some hair in the bathroom, so I burnt it." So she has absolutely no idea why she's burning my hair, but she does. And I remember
why do you burn? You burn your own hair?
Excuse me?
Do you burn your own hair?
Yes, every strand of it.
Okay, and why?
Above my head, it's burnt. And so my mother said that You don't want birds to get a hold of it and make their nests, because that was a bad sign. And then there was all these things that couldn't get a hold of your hair or your nails, your hair or your fingernails. And so I'm not as diligent with my fingernails, but my hair I am. And so I
Oh,
have to burn it so that the smoke alarms don't go off. So I have to open the windows. It's so hot. I'm a hot mess.
wow.
The
Wow.
artificial hair I don't have to worry about. That doesn't count. That's my hair.
Okay. Well, you know, I've heard this. I don't burn my hair, and I lose quite a bit of it in the combing process. As far as I know, somebody got a hex on me right now.
Yes.
but but my mother was not into any of that, and so I didn't learn it, you know, in the home. But I have heard other Black people, um, you know, talk about some of these different superstitions, and I I don't know. I mean, it it they strike me as strange, and you know, as you all know, I'm just a ball full of questions, and so you know, and so I've always questioned uh, why we believe the things that we believe, but you know, uh, maybe somebody's got some personal experience, you know, with somebody uh, putting a hex on them. And I don't know if it's African, if it's hoodoo, where all this stuff comes from. But I think we got a lot of it in the Black community.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I think it speaks to how we have been culturally, like this is truly a project to forced immigration and in many ways forced migration. Because how are Black Americans and Africans through Black people throughout the diaspora, how are how are we removed from this land, and then these cultural practices remain? And then it makes you, the author has a way of making us reconsider and rethink religious tolerance, because when we think about ritual, if the burning of the hair symbolizes or represents ritual, then there are rituals in every religion, you know, whether it's an African traditional religion, organized religions that are recognized in the mainstream. Ritual is a way of life. And if you look at a lot of, you know, successful people, like I've watched her master classes, and much of what they talk about is ritual, establishing rituals that kind of lead to, you know, their so-called success. So I marvel at what the author is doing here and how she forces us to confront our cultural, assumptions, and how she even encourages us at so early in the text, even to consider, to think about cultural logic that might work in one context, but it's not transferable in another context. And I can't wait to see what's going to happen here. I can't I can't I can't wait to see what's going to happen here, and I'm thinking in particular about Jamaica and um, some of just, you know, again, how African traditional religions are still being practiced there, even in private. right? The Americas as in other places. So I wonder if we're going to be moving further into this novel. I wonder if we're going to get glimpses of African traditional religions or some kind of. I mean, I know it's creolized, but I just wonder how the author is going to contain that in this space.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, Leonie, you don't even speak patois, so I'm guessing you don't know nothing about burning no hair. Your Americanized self.
I'm from Canada. No, but my understanding is that even barbershops burn hair.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't grow up with any of that stuff because I grew up with pious Christian people, but like whatever. But I knew all this. You hear all the superstitions and all of that stuff, and certainly people do things with hair. People do things all the time. Get little dolls of protection and all that kind of stuff. So, or put curses on people, and I'm just trying to keep all mine. So that's my only job right now. So it's all right.
All right. Well, that's something to think about. It's almost 8 o'clock, so let's switch gears and look at.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure.
The colorism, the coloring of the skin. I think that was the hugest thing for me in this first 2 chapters. That here you have this girl, her skin is wrapped in cellophane. It's 100 degrees, and she has lye on her skin.
God no la ugly.
And so I just kept wondering, how does she have the sweatsuit on, but she doesn't have the lye mixture on her face? Wouldn't the face be the thing that you need to have this on? And I just felt so bad for her that she hates her color so much.
The sweatsuit accelerates the bleaching process. Still have your face, processed without having to have the cover on it, I guess.
No. If you lighten your face and you put the stuff on your arms and put on the sweatsuit, that ain't gonna lighten your face.
No, but like if you think of it like lotion, you could still have lotion on your face. It's still having an effect, but maybe the effect is not as going on as fast as it's happening on the part that you have covered. Well, the colorism issue actually is going to come up throughout the book. So
does it sound like she's gonna be 6, 7 different colors?
Yeah.
So God bless this child.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for
that. Yeah. Okay, so next week we have chapters 3 and 4, and basically what we did was went through the book and tried to come up with about a 30-page, 25 to 30-page section. So that's why some of the chapters, it may look like a lot of chapters, but it's actually still about 30 pages. Because some of the chapters are real short. But anyway, who wants to go next week? January 30th, chapters 3 and 4.
I can do that.
I'll take the 6th.
Nicole? Leonie, can you do the 13th?
Just looking. 1 second. Yep, I can do the 13th.
All right, then we have a break on February 20th. I can do the next one, chapters 10 to 12. And then who wants March 6th?
That gets tricky for me because sometimes the first Tuesdays are going to be harder for me.
I can do March 6th.
Okay, and may I have, do you all mind if I take the 13th and the 20th back to back?
I don't mind.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'll do the 27th.
That's a break on the 27th. Can you do one of the April dates, Kim?
Yes, I can do April 10th.
Okay. So we have April 3rd and April 17th.
I can do the 17th.
And
Okay,
I'm
so
going to be presenting at a conference then, so I don't even know. I don't think I'll join. I
April
don't know
3rd.
just yet. Yes.
Okay, so I'll do April 3rd. Okay.
And if I can't make it, then we may just have two. And I don't know if we want to consider moving down, skipping that week.
April 3rd?
Which week are you speaking of, Kim?
April 3rd.
April 3rd. Oh, okay.
I'm not sure about that Tuesday.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't we get
time? We got time.
Closer to the date and figure it out.
All right.
Right. Any final thoughts?
Well, it was wonderful to delve into some fiction. So, yay for this selection. It's been wonderful.
All right.
Yeah. I'm really excited about looking at a story that's based on in the Caribbean and kind of stepping out of the African American stuff just for a little bit.
Well, it feels like so many similarities. I don't know how far we're stepping out.
I think that I definitely am noticing things in the reading that really touch on my own experience. They may not come up in questions, but it's good to read it in the book and touch on that.
Do you have an example?
Oh, I just thought the whole common law, the comment that was made about like how people don't get married there in common law, and I'm like, nobody in my family got married until like my sister was the first person to get married in my family. My grandparents weren't married; no one was married before. And it's true. Most people that I know don't get married until you come into the church, maybe.
Do they take the father's name, the babies?
Yeah. Yeah, they do. Sometimes. Yeah, they do. But like my mom was one of four. Her parents were never married. My mom didn't get married until she met my father. She was almost 40. Yeah, it's just that kind of thing. I remember I wrote a comment, and that's the way it is in my family.
Yeah, and I saw that part. There just was so much.
Yeah, there's a lot in there.
So much in this first chapter, yeah. But yeah, that's definitely striking. You know,
and I'm really looking forward. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you about tourism because there's a reason why I don't go as a tourist anywhere, and it's why I'm really sensitive to it.
Are you speaking of like the objectification?
Yeah, especially like I come from a place that's not seen. Most people who go to Jamaica have never been to Jamaica. Like if you have not seen and you're not allowed to see it. And it goes beyond capitalism. It's how Jamaicans are. It's like and I see that steeped in colonialism. It's like every Jamaican I know has an accent that they have in front of white people and they have another accent
Uh-huh.
that they speak. And especially in Jamaica where you're like my mom grew up going to Catholic school. They do a lot of rote learning, all this other kind of stuff. So they're taught, like I said before, they're very like Victorian in their mindset. So they're taught a very strict idea of what proper is. So they have all the code. The code is built right into the system.
Mhm.
So it's very interesting. Like even to hear you guys talk about like school systems, it's like in recognition that like most places in the world that have a school system, they don't have such thing as the kind of choice that America brags about, even though that choice comes from racism, right? You go along in the same system. Like my mother and my sisters, you know, they learned through rote learning. You know, they quote big passages of the Bible because that's what you were taught. They had very like, you know, and if you go to school in Jamaica, you come to North America, your education is advanced because there's so much rote learning that's done in the system there. So
Mhm.
that's if you can afford to go to school.
And you know, Leonie, I like that you mentioned that because it does also explain she kind of unveils tension in terms of how we define a minority status here in America and how that becomes there's a slippage, shall I say,
Hmm.
when we start speaking in terms of the diaspora, because a lot of times the immigrants that we meet are immigrants who were at some form or fashion successful in their native lands. They were better prepared to leave. They're either financially, we talk about the brain drain, high intelligence. And so when controversies come up, Black Americans and other Black people in the diaspora against each other, competing for affirmative action coins, shall I say. And so it's really interesting because if Thandi leaves, or the hope is that she's going to leave and she's going to, become this doctor, right? So she will have already, but her story is already unique. She's already an outlier. The children in her area, her community, do not have that opportunity to access the educations that she's accessing. And then for her, there's that even a more complex insider outsider when we talk about her identity politics. So I can see, I'm just wondering, where is the author going to ultimately go with this? Because I see her touching on some very relevant, very contemporary issues that are still, again, in enslavement, colonialism, just
Yeah.
racist and racial oppression.
Yeah. It'd be really interesting because Nicole Dennis-Benn would have come from that kind of background, right? Like there's a reason why Black people who come from elsewhere outperform African Americans. There's a reason. It's because these are the people who come from the most privilege. African Americans, to get privilege, it's like next to you're in a country where the whole system's against you. And the thing is that like for Thandi, for them to even consider for Thandi to go to school, they're going to have to pay for school. They have to pay for the uniform. The idea of having her become a doctor, having go to foreign, as they would say, as we say in Jamaica, to become a doctor, That's why they're living in poverty. So it doesn't matter that she has a hotel job because they have to save every cent to be able to send somebody to go to school somewhere. It's
And
every
so,
single cent, right? Like you think about the dollars here. Like a foreign, say if she were to go to like a big school in the US, it's like what, $50,000 a year or something? The Jamaican dollars probably like, so it'd probably be like maybe 150, $200,000 in Jamaican dollars. Like that's big money.
right.
A
Yeah.
hotel job's not going to do anything for you.
Right. And so it puts a spin on American dreams and American dreaming.
Yeah.
So actually to see Black immigrants be able to access or realize the American dream that's already foreclosed,
Yeah.
as you stated, to many Black American citizens. And she has a beautiful way a subtle way of unveiling
Yeah.
these tensions.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I will say, can you recall when is her name Luvi? Did she call herself Luvi Ajayi? Or is it
Yeah.
Lovey? Okay.
Yeah.
And Dr. Stacy Patton. I don't know if you remember that conflict between them,
Yeah.
but that was precisely a reenactment of that Dr. Stacy Patton talked about Luvi as an African immigrant who was very privileged in her home land. She even brought up her tweets where she was like, "Oh, she has a maid," and so on. And so, and I'm just wondering, how do we overcome that, especially when we know that women are playing a central role in terms of immigration, and a lot of times, we could still say African immigrants in the African diaspora are overwhelmingly women. They are, in terms of lower sectors of labor still. But I just want to see where she's going with this in the text, and I wonder real life connection, just a text to world, or text to self connection, shall I say? How do we,
I think
engage in dealing with that tension?
I think it's really going to be, I think it's super tough because, like, my mom came to Canada. She's not one of those who came from, like, a lot to come to Canada. She came at a time when Canada was accepting people of color. And
Mm-hmm.
their main qualification was that you had to come from the Commonwealth. So we didn't come from that kind of background. And
Mm-hmm.
the thing is, though, is that, like, I grew up, no, so let me just say this. It's hard. My mom had a hard time seeing, for example, she would not have understood the African American experience, right? It didn't look, the idea of like that Black people were poor or not working or whatever. And I think it's because she's coming from a place where she has to come to this country. She has to work 2, 3, 4 jobs just to make the
Right.
rent. And she took the leap. I think there's something about like leaving and coming into a place that just makes it seem like you do anything that possible. Because I grew up in housing and all the white people were on welfare, and my mom was the only person who I knew, the only person I knew literally who was working, living in housing. All my friends, they grew up generationally on welfare, and I'm talking mostly white friends because people that grew up in housing were mostly white at first. Grew up with generational, like people not working for a long time, people on welfare, blah blah blah. That's never. I have never, and so my mom was rare in that she worked, and so I think there's just this idea of like being able to leave a place to come to another place that you're just gonna hustle and do everything that you can to like make it, and so you don't understand when people say they can't make it because it feels like you've done the impossible.
Right. And then to acknowledge, like, they wouldn't have, when you leave your native land, you don't have the same baggage. Like, there are some things that I acknowledge, my the Black men in my program, they're from Ghana, that I understand on a, visceral level, as well as just logically. I understand when they're saying certain things escape them. They don't see it. So, I could have looked like a race baiting Black woman to say, did you see them following us?
Yeah.
Or did you notice? And they're like, what? Because it's not their experience.
Yeah. Exactly.
Hence why we're so invested in Black immigrants in America, making it and adding to kind of this notion of, affirmative action. And so those affirmative action gains, because when you look at like universities, especially here in the South, and you look at where the affirmative action, so-called, well, we have different ways of coding it now. In Texas, George W. Bush, when he was governor, he called it the talent, the top 10. And so, but different ways of coding it, but you're dealing with a phenomenon where you have Black immigrants who were, grew up privileged. And you're talking about very poorly educated Black Americans trying to compete with that. And individuals who are multilingual, which, and I don't say that to, I see it from both angles, right? So it's a horrible way to continue policy and institutions pitting us against each other, which is why, the practice of diaspora is another reason why it's so uneven. It looks so different for, in different spaces, different sites, different individuals. We're being, I don't know a better way to look at it other than they're pitting us against each other still. So it's like, oh, well, this person came from, Nigeria, and they've gone on generations of doctors now.
I bet you're going to start seeing that in conservative media now, right? Around DACA.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? Because now the
That's
problem,
so true.
the way that Fox News will say it is, the problem with DACA is that that these people came here illegally, and they're going to pit them against the people of color who come legally into the States.
Right.
That's how they're going to do it. That's how the white people who run media are going to do it. They're going to pit the people of color against each other.
Yeah.
Right? So that you ignore what's happening in the system, the fact that the system is racist and ridiculous and full of shit. You ignore that, but you're going to get the brown people, and you're going to get all the successful, people who came to America legally. And no one's ever going to discuss the fact that, like, probably Donald Trump's ancestors probably couldn't even fucking read. Sorry, my language. That there's so many people all these people who are proud of their Irish ancestors who signed their name with an X. Do you know understand what I'm saying? And being like they're owed their American citizenry when they basically came here on menial labor.
Yes.
Right? And yet they're still better than someone who comes from Africa, who came from Africa after going to London to get their advanced degree, coming to America to get their PhD, and went across the country to get their second PhD. They're still better.
Yeah.
They're still better.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah. Wow. So much.
Thank you for indulging
yes.
the conversation.
Here.
No, so we've missed each other, huh?
Right. Yeah.
Well, I do have to go, but thank you. I'm looking forward to these conversations. So
this is a great I'm happy for this select. Who nominated this? Who suggested this book?
I think a couple. I think Leonie, but I think
Leonie and Michelle. Yeah,
I put no books that were African American on my list except for
right.
None.
Right. And I think, Kim, you might have suggested this one too. I think there were a couple of people.
No,
Yeah.
I piggyback off Leonie. I felt that if she was going for this book, I'd go with her. I just kind of jumped
Okay.
on board with her.
Yeah,
So I'm hoping that we have these conversations because they are so insightful that we never get an opportunity to look at the differences between us and how we can all kind of understand each other.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I'll just say this one thing, as an African American, we were terrorized in this place.
Yep.
And I think sometimes when people come here and they say, why don't African Americans do more? We did. I think that there's something about that historical terror that it's hard to see.
Right.
So
Right.
I just love all the different nuances of this conversation because I think I can learn a lot from us being open with each other.
Okay. Well, all right, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
And don't be expecting 8 questions next week. Just don't even go. Don't even think about it.
That's right. I know that's right.
We don't have time for 8 questions ever. So it's all.
Absolutely.
I will see you all next week reading our story together.
Yeah.
Good night.
All right,
Good
Bye.
night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.